Part I Nakia Chapter 1 Nakia tasted sea salt on her lips when she awakened in the cocoon. She moved slightly and the organic cords that were attached to her broke away. By instinct she pushed her hands through the cocoon's yellow tissue and forced herself out of it. She was at the bottom of a pool. She looked up and saw Shuri and Okoi observing her. A door opened in the side wall which led Nakia into a long tunnel. She stayed in the tunnel for an hour and then another door appeared which took her into a larger pool. Nakia slowly remembered that she was in Wakanda's techno jungle where her transformation into an Atlantean had taken 3 weeks. While in the new pool, female divers came to Nakia. They inspected her and gave her Atlantean attire. "Can you hear me?" asked Shuri. The voice came through a mechanism in Nakia's ear. "Yes," replied Nakia. "How do you feel?" "I am breathing the water normally and my movements are not hampered." "How do I look?" "See for yourself," said Shuri. A diver held up a tablet screen that showed Nakia as a blue pigmented humanoid with short wavy black hair and scantily dressed. "In 2 hours T'Challa will start training you. In the meantime the support team will familiarize you with the equipment," said Shuri. Nakia was taught the use of air masks, emergency signals and medical treatments for her new biology. She was taken to the northeast of Wakanda to a large border river. There she met T'Challa the Black Panther, the man who had grown from the prince that she once had a crush on. "We will tone your muscles for underwater combat. A situation may arise where you may have to fight in Atlantis," said T'Challa. They dived to the bottom of the deep river and there were 2 objects on the river bed. One was an 8 feet in height metal ball and the other was a metal cube of similar height. T'Challa held his breath and flipped the cube over. He signaled to Nakia to push the ball. She tried at first but it did not move, so she concentrated harder. Then the ball began to roll. Nakia and T'Challa moved the objects along the river bed for an hour, then they sparred. Nakia was surprised that T'Challa could do so many things with one breath. She wondered if it was the result of the heart-shaped herb or his Black Panther training. Chapter 2 The original Atlanteans died when space gods decimated the Earth. Neptune, feeling cheated by his brothers Zeus and Hades, had the space god's servants create a species of aquatic humanoids who would worship him like the men on Zeus' land and the souls in Hades' underworld. Neptune sent his worshippers to live in the sunken ruins of Atlantis and the new dwellers became known as the Atlanteans. Nakia was given this history as she and T'Challa chatted on the river bank. "Neptune has neglected Atlantis and the nation was destroyed countless times because of his absenteeism," said T'Challa. "Yet his people still worship him as a god. But he might feel that the people will turn away from him if another disaster happens. Hence his new defense system for the city," said Nakia. "That is exactly what I was thinking," said T'Challa. "But isn't it unfair to Atlantis that Wakanda should cripple the defense system so that we can hurt the reputation of the man who created it for Neptune?" asked Nakia. "Sobek is in a cold war with Wakanda for stakes that are higher than Atlantis," replied T'Challa. "But we can recommend Wakanda Tech as a substitute for Sobek's system," said Nakia. "Namor and Wakanda are friends today and enemies tomorrow. He will not accept our help because it impacts his military strategy. But he asked us to test the defense system. It may be his way of requesting a long-lasting peace between Wakanda and Atlantis," said Nakia. "Perhaps. Promise me that you will consider it." "You are very forward," said T'Challa. "Remember I knew you as a child and I was forward to you then also," said Nakia. "I do remember. So now you admit it. Times were different then. As they will always be. I know that you have a lot on your shoulders." "I do. After you are planted in Atlantis, which is tomorrow, I have to oversee the Council of Progress to determine which direction Wakanda should be headed in the next 50 years, said T'Challa. Do you still believe that breaking the isolation policy was the right direction to take? Yes. But after you and I are buried, do you think Wakanda will revert to isolation? I have seen alternate futures of Wakanda, so I cannot be sure what will happen, and so I don't think about it, replied T'Challa. Are you seeing someone? She perished with the rest of the Inhumans. How long ago? Several months. And did you tell anyone? No, only you. So who is your confidant? No one. We have to fix that. The leader of the nation cannot be plastering over his shortcomings. You need someone to talk about what you cannot say to others, said Nakia. And who is your confidant? Asked T'Challa. You are, replied Nakia. He handed her a ring. Turn it like this and it will activate a pin. Inside the pin is a neurochemical that is made specifically for Atlanteans. It will grant you 3 hours of control over anyone infected with the chemical, and they will have no memory of what transpired, said T'Challa. How will I send information out of the city? The X-Men use telepathy to contact Namor, so there are no psi shields in the city. Every 2 hours Wakanda's telepaths will speak with you, replied T'Challa. Can I try the ring on you? I don't want to use it in the field without testing it. I was given the antidote already, said T'Challa. Chapter 3 Atlantis was now invisible. Only Atlanteans could see the pocket dimension on the ocean floor that provided access to the city. The city was out of phase with the rest of the Earth, so any foreign object like a submarine would pass through the towers without knowing that they were there. Nakia noted those details as she swam through the avenues of Atlantis. She was escorted by a mid-level soldier who divulged the military hardware secrets of the city. He carried her to the mystic quarters and she met the chief. He was a short and ancient Atlantean. Nakia pretended to be an eager apprentice. She was able to inject him with the neurochemical. He said that only Namor had the full knowledge of the mystical defenses that were now in place. Part 2 Shuri Chapter 1 X-Men Headquarters. Namor was known for his infatuations with Susan Storm and Emma Frost. Susan Storm was a friend of Shuri, but Emma Frost was not, and Shuri chose her as the bait to lure out Namor. Shuri went to her ex-sister-in-law Ororo for some assistance on capturing Emma Frost. Firstly, how are your babies? Asked Ororo. They are fine. My mother and mother-in-law are all over them, replied Shuri. Weren't you and your mother-in-law in a disagreement not so long ago? We seem to have mended our relationship, replied Shuri. And Kana? He is turning out to be a great father to the babies. I am glad he did not lose confidence when I was playing hard to get. One thing about Kana is that he is never short on confidence, said Ororo. Emma Frost. I am going after her. Are the X-Men currently on any missions to get her? Not that I am aware of. What is this about? I need to talk with her privately. I am guessing that there will be violence in this conversation. That will depend on her. I will help you find her, but I want something done in return. What? The Mutant Academy in Wakanda. What became of it after T'Challa and I ended? It was placed under the Council of Progress. Is this the right time for me to ask T'Challa to send the mutants here? I will ask. Thanks, said Ororo. Chapter 2 Panama. As a former X-Men member, Emma Frost was able to use her telepathy to hide from the Cerebro scans. So a scan was done on her close associate, which led Shuri to a beach house in Panama. A disguised Shuri entered the bedroom where Emma Frost and her boyfriend Alex Summers aka Havoc slept. Shuri turned her skin metallic. She pressed Alex on the chest and he awakened, then she punched him into unconsciousness. The noise made Emma open her eyes. Shuri grabbed her and used meta-human speed to take both of them halfway down the beach. Emma Frost failed to breach Shuri's mind shield, so the mutant criminal turned into her diamond skin form. Shuri held her by the throat and Emma tried to resist by fighting, but Shuri's Black Panther combat skills were too much for her. "Alex is dead," said Shuri. "No, check for yourself," said Shuri. Shuri knew that Emma's telepathy could not work while she was in diamond form, and the dead boyfriend lie was a ruse to make the woman vulnerable. Emma reverted to her human skin. "You can't sense him," said Shuri. "I want Namor." "Darling, if it is Namor that you want, then it is Namor that you will get," said Emma Frost. "And when he brings you inches away from death, then I will be the one to finish you off." Shuri slapped her unconscious and radioed one of the 2 stealth enemy warships that were in the sky. "He is on his way," said Shuri. She anamorphed into blackbirds and went onto a fallen tree trunk. Several minutes later, Namor flew over the beach and he landed next to Emma Frost. An enemy warship fired upon Namor and he flew kamikaze style into it. The remotely controlled decoy warship erupted into a powder that weakened Namor to the point that he collapsed over the ocean. Shuri transformed into a human and raced across the water in time to catch Namor. She brought him to the beach and radioed for the telepath on board the real enemy warship. "Enter his mind quickly," ordered Shuri. "And find what you can on the Atlantis defense system." Part 3 King Eric 2000 years into the future, the year 4086. The ruins of Atlantis. Challenge Day is in a couple of months. Shouldn't you be concentrating on defending your title as Wakanda's king instead of walking through the mud of a dead city? "King Eric, are you even listening to me?" asked the girl. "Why don't you call me by that nickname you told Ri?" asked Eric. "You overheard that?" "Yes. I like the ring of Killmonger," replied Eric. "What else did you hear?" "That you still speak to your namesake Shuri about me through a time portal." "Are you threatened by that?" "You would not be down here with me if I was," replied Eric. "By the way, why haven't you told everyone that I am from the past?" "I have no reason to as yet," replied the girl. "Does Ri know?" "She does not." "All the good that I have done for Wakanda and the world, yet you still abhor me," said Eric. "It is based on principle and has nothing to do with you personally. The monarchy system should have never returned." Eric jumped into an avenue and the 16-year-old followed his lead. He looked up at the distant sky, which was made possible by the girl's waterbending invention. The waterbender had parted the ocean down to the floor where Eric and the girl walked. "Why are we here?" asked the girl. "I thought that your exploration of this place ended weeks ago." Eric pointed at a mechanized tower in the center of the city that had Wakandan symbols on it. "Explain why Wakandan tech is in the heart of Atlantis," said Eric. "Before my time," said the girl. 2000 years ago I killed Atlantean pirates, but I respected them. Their species should not have died out," said Eric. "They should not have practiced dark mysticism. That is what killed them," said the girl. "Says who?" "The history videos," the girl replied and shrugged. "And the videos never mentioned a tower." "I don't know. Do a search on this ancient history crap." "I did a search on every database and nothing came up. So what was the point in asking me?" "To see your reaction," replied Eric. "Bast help me," said the girl and clenched her fists. "Speaking of Bast, the AI and you will help me resurrect Atlantis," said Eric. The girl closed her eyes, clasped her hands and walked away. "I pray that you lose on Challenge Day and end my suffering," said the girl. "Okay, my chief Bast administrator," said Eric. Chapter 2 Through a forward data pin, the girl told Bast to examine the strange tower. A beam of light fell from the aircraft that hovered over the parted ocean. The beam covered the tower and Bast said, the composition is unknown because the metal is not on any periodic table, whether earthly or extraterrestrial. The symbols are obscure shadow physics equations. The structure is totally solid with no hollow parts. "How old is the tower?" asked the girl. "Difficult to say. Mid-22nd century is the best estimate," responded Bast. "Is it computerized?" "There are no firmware components or processors," replied Bast. The girl opened her hands and a holographic image of the tower emerged. She broke the tower into 4 parts. Then she saw the solution to the mystery. "Bast slowly turned the tower anti-clockwise," said the girl. The tower moved and a sound like a key in a lock was made. The girl smiled and looked at Eric. His face was expressionless. The tower rose to reveal a larger one beneath it. "The second tower is hollow," said Bast. The tower stopped the ascension and a door was at the base of the new one. "Let's investigate, Princess," said Eric as his clothes transformed into a vibranium combat suit. "Did you bring your gauntlets?" "Yes," replied the girl. Part 4 Okoi Chapter 1 Present-day Okoi had never worked with Kana before. He was a few years younger than her, but he made up for the age difference with experience. Likewise, she suspected that Kana was getting to know how she operated. Based on Nakia and Shuri's intel, a plan of attack on Atlantis was devised on a hologram board by Kana and Okoi in the commando headquarters. The power source for the mystical charms are beneath these ridges at the back of the city. "Nakia does not have the resources to attack that place," said Okoi. "Namor has it guarded by a mindless behemoth, and that will take time to defeat," said Kana. "We will send in the transhuman robots to take the brunt of the Atlantean forces and trigger the mystical defense grid," said Okoi. "But that will give away the element of surprise and be a misuse of our major firepower," said Kana. "At first, but remember T'Challa has to get Neptune to deactivate the system since Namor can't. The Atlanteans will believe that the attack is done, but we will have a backup force at the ridges with an interdimensional beam that will unlock the invisibility field and allow us passage through," said Okoi. "However, we are basing everything on what Neptune told Namor. If the god held back something as a failsafe, then it will be like walking into a trap," said Kana. "That is a good point. Nakia and Shuri should go to the power source first. Then we send in the robots and the backup force," said Kana. Part V T'Challa the Black Panther. Athens. Neptune had no luck as a god because he was jealous of his brothers. Instead of taking care of his version of Atlantis, he instead tried to make surface dwellers his subjects with minimal success. He now realized that he erred in his past judgments. With the new Atlantis defense apparatus, he could start making amends with his original people. Neptune spent his time in a shipbuilding yard disguised as a mid-level supervisor. He sent the workers home early when he sensed T'Challa. Sobek had warned him about T'Challa's jealousy that Atlantis would bypass Wakanda on the world stage. Neptune would have none of it. As T'Challa walked up the pier, Neptune saw a jade aura around the Black Panther and felt like a piece of the universe's fabric was on the man. "Did you come to agitate a god?" asked Neptune as he revealed his giant form. "I came to reason with a god, but if he must first be humbled, then so be it," replied T'Challa. Next story, War Game Chapter 1. The war satellites fired their fusion cannons into the tidal waves that were sent to Wakanda by the god Neptune. Then the targeting systems for the satellites turned to T'Challa's location in Athens and fired. This time the laser beams combined into one and it was directed at Neptune. The god deflected the attack with his trident, and the wayward laser beam demolished the shipping yard that acted as the battleground for T'Challa the Black Panther and the god. "Not good enough," shouted Neptune. T'Challa sat inside of the translucent jade tiger's head with his legs crossed and eyes closed as he was one with the first god of fear. The giant beast of green light circled the skyscraper-sized Neptune in the wreckage. The Jade Tiger might be powerful, but it puts you at a disadvantage in a fight with someone who you cannot lay hands on like me, said Neptune. A shield formed on his forearm and he knocked the trident against it, causing a sonic wave that was meant to topple the Jade Tiger. T'Challa made the Jade Tiger leap over Neptune's attack. Neptune caught the fear god in the side with the trident and tossed the being to the ground. Who is the one being humbled now? Go back from whence you came and stay out of Atlantis' affairs, said Neptune. He stabbed the trident into the ground and it forced the separation of the land. The section that the Jade Tiger fell on was taken into the sea. T'Challa felt sympathy for Neptune because the modern age had dulled the god's once great sense of military strategy. T'Challa made a promise to himself that he would not lose his fighting mind in his senior years. The first mistake that Neptune made in their battle was the assumption that the Jade Tiger was an offensive weapon when it was the opposite. T'Challa was aware of Neptune's control of all water even in the human body. The Jade Tiger nullified that advantage. Neptune's second error was that he did not form a mystical force field around himself because he needed to attack with the trident. T'Challa opened his eyes and stood. He held up an amulet that absorbed the Jade Tiger. Then T'Challa activated his revamped mystical protection armor from his Black Panther ceremonial suit. Nano-machines made the transformation seem instant. T'Challa made teleportation jumps to Neptune's legs and forearms. He latched miniaturized antimatter bombs to those areas. Reversed PIM particles made the bombs larger and T'Challa detonated them. Neptune's yell of pain was muted by the thunderclaps that his mental connection to the weather caused as he collapsed. The blue-skinned god shrunk to a human size and T'Challa came over the mutilated being. The Black Panther calculated that it may take a day for the limbs to regenerate, which was more than enough time to get the god to reveal the secrets of Atlantis' new defense system. T'Challa planted an antimatter bomb on Neptune's forehead. "I am sorry for this," said T'Challa. "Save it," said Neptune. T'Challa's mask interface indicated that Neptune tried a mental spell on the Black Panther, but it was blocked by the armor. "You are not at full strength, so your mysticism will not work," said T'Challa. "What do you want?" asked Neptune. T'Challa's hyper ears detected the approach of the Greek military, so he took up Neptune and teleported. Chapter 2 T'Challa rested Neptune on the god's old throne in Crete. "How do you know about this place?" asked Neptune. "Wakanda has extensive records on the BC world," replied T'Challa. "And I have heard much about Wakanda in both the human world and beyond," said Neptune. "Atlantis has challenged Wakanda to test its new defense system that was designed by Sobek and given to you in secret. I need to know exactly what it is and its fail-safes," said T'Challa. "You expect a god to betray his people?" "Yes, because in the long run Atlantis will suffer from its association with Sobek," replied T'Challa. "Rubbish! Have you ever wondered why your Atlantis attracts so much destruction in the first place? The Titan Atlas had a daughter called Atlantis that the original nation was named after. You, Zeus and Hades killed her with the rest of the Titans except for Atlas. Atlantis' love for her father kept her spirit on Earth long enough for her to curse your children, the aquatic humanoids that you commissioned to be made for your pleasure. Modern Atlantis does not need a defensive spell, it requires a cleansing one," said T'Challa. Neptune took a moment. "How can I take your word?" asked the god. "You know that it is the truth. You are the true cause of your people's woes," said T'Challa. Neptune closed and opened his eyes. "I will find a way to break the curse," said the god. "Wakanda can help, but it will take time." "So you say?" "I need the layout of the defense system so I can show Namor its frailties and then we can concentrate on reversing the curse," said T'Challa. "But I am the one that introduced him to the system. How can I then tell him that it will not work?" "I understand the dilemma. Namor respects and trusts you so much that he eagerly wanted to see the defense system in action," said T'Challa. Like a son going to the neighborhood children to show off the new toy that his father just gave him, said Neptune. T'Challa folded his arms. When my limbs have healed, then I will speak to Namor about the defense system, said Neptune. It has to be me, not you. That will give Sobek too much time to rethink his approach. I need the layout now. Why are you so concerned about him? Because I have first-hand knowledge of how deceitful he truly is, replied T'Challa. Are you sure it is not jealousy? You made me introspect on my actions and you should do the same, said Neptune. I have nothing to be jealous about. And I have something that he craves. Which is? Family, replied T'Challa. The deal T'Challa made with Neptune was that Wakanda would not destroy the Atlantis defense system in return for their involvement in lifting the curse. What about this thing on my forehead? Asked Neptune. In case you lied about the layout, I will blow your head off and it may or may not regenerate, replied T'Challa. Chapter 3 Wakanda. T'Challa met with his war commanders Kana and Okoye. He gave them the information on the Atlantis defense system and he went to the marshlands where the Mystics clan resided. T'Challa visited the clan's leader, who was a small man in his senior years. Based on Nakia's prompting to find a better resolution to the Sobek Atlantis problem, T'Challa had given the old man the records on Atlantis and he was able to determine that there was a curse. Have you found a way to reverse the curse? Asked T'Challa. No, because this curse was made a universal law when the earth started over from the Great Cataclysm. It will take surgical precision to remove it, replied the man. Can science speed up the process? Asked T'Challa. Probably. T'Challa was interrupted by calls to his Kimoyo from the head of NATO and the United States. T'Challa presumed that it was about the use of the war satellites and the cosmic jade tiger in a sovereign nation, but he was more concerned about that Sobek's reaction to the fight with Neptune. Obviously Atlantis was the destination of the Mystic Master to check on his work. I have another favor to ask of you, said T'Challa to the clan leader. What is it? Is it possible for you to make contact with the chief mystic in Atlantis from here? Asked T'Challa. Lake Ubadi, Jabari lands. The giant Kora eagle bomb dived into the lake and swam to the bottom like an cormorant bird by vibrating its molecules to the point that the Kora eagle shimmered. The Kora eagle broke apart into smaller birds of light that then swam through the lake. The birds gathered back together when a mid-age woman entered the lake. The gathered birds formed into the human Shuri. She went to her mother-in-law Vi at the surface of the lake and the woman told her that her mission was about to start. Shuri transformed into the Kora war eagle once more and flew from the lake with Vi on her back. Shuri landed on the shore where her commando gear and communicators were located. She noticed that the new Jabari clan leader observed her and Vi from a cliff. Can we help you with something? Asked Shuri in the eagle form. The clan leader made a displeased face and walked away. I will speak to the clan elders to find out what is going on, said Vi as she turned into a flock of blackbirds that went to the snow-capped mountain that was next to the lake. Shuri shook her partly metallic feathers, then reverted to her human form and collected her gear. She had been training for several weeks with Vi to use the Membek gifts underwater. Vi instructed her to use the principle of burrowing through the membranes that separated multi-dimensions, which Shuri normally did. Water is just another medium, Vi often said. The skill was difficult to learn, but Shuri believed that she had covered much ground. Earlier that day, tidal waves that were destined for Wakanda were destroyed, so she guessed that her brother T'Challa had met with Neptune. Shuri flew as fast as the wind to meet an enemy airship and it took her to the Pacific Ocean. On the way, Shuri was advised by her husband Kana and Okoye that the mission outcome was altered by T'Challa, but the war game remained the same. Non-lethal force was to be used to commandeer the power supply for the Atlantis defense system, and Shuri was to accomplish this with Nakia's assistance. Nakia was a former commando-turned-spy with war experience in the Orion Belt sector of space. Shuri had a lot of faith in the woman's professional skills, but it was the personal life that made Shuri feel awkward about working with her. Shuri sensed that T'Challa and Nakia were rekindling a childhood friendship that may turn romantic. The issue was that Shuri was still friends with T'Challa's ex-wife. And T'Challa and his ex apparently will have a daughter in the future, since that said child had traveled as a teenager into the past to live with T'Challa. Shuri felt like she would have to eventually choose sides between Nakia and the ex, even though she preferred the ex with T'Challa. Then there was the Inhuman woman that T'Challa had an on and off relationship with sometime after his marriage ended. The Inhumans were destroyed several months ago. Shuri knew that T'Challa grieved, although he did not show it. She wondered if he had come to terms with the lost. Then in her own personal life, Shuri suspected that the Jabari clan eagerly awaited Vi to teach her the final Membek gift so that Shuri would stop visiting that region. She suspected that was the reason for M'Baku's observation of her at the lake. But Shuri had taken heart that she had won over her in-laws' resentment for the Black Panther clan. And that seemed like a far-fetched idea before Shuri's quadruplets were born. The infants were with Ramonda for the day, and Shuri cherished the expression of joy on her mother's face when she first saw the grandchildren. Shuri hoped that her relationship with her daughters would not echo the tumultuous one that she had with Ramonda. The airship came over the drop-off point. Shuri had on her commando suit and a special oxygen filter in her mask. She dived into the ocean and met Nakia, who was genetically altered to appear as an Atlantean. Nakia rode on a large red turtle to Shuri's amazement. "This is how the natives choose to travel," joked Nakia. Shuri decided to keep an open mind about Nakia and accompanied her to Atlantis. Shuri turned on the invisibility mode of her suit. Atlantis was equally invisible, and Nakia led Shuri to the hidden entrances to the city. Atlantis was noisy. The avenues teemed with natives and ocean animals. Coral designs were on buildings, and there were seemingly endless spires. Children, couples, and the elderly went about their normal lives, unaware that two Wakandans were in their midst. The palace resembled a pearl, and there were trains of natives moving in and out of it. For a moment, Shuri regretted that she threatened to destroy the city when she was temporarily ruler of Wakanda during a prolonged absence by T'Challa. Also, the original Atlantis before the Great Cataclysm was the mystical birthplace of the Membek gifts. That technicality was not lost on Shuri. Shuri wondered if the King Namor had returned from the ambush that she made on him earlier. Nakia reported that she did not see him in the city. Shuri guessed that he was aware that Wakanda was close to breaking the defense system. Nakia carried her out of the urban center to near the military zone, where the defense system's power source was located in a ridge. Shuri held Nakia's arm. "I am going to take us into hyperspeed," said Shuri. Then Shuri noticed that someone approached them. Nakia told Shuri that the person was the chief mystic of Atlantis. "Membek," said the elderly mystic while he swam up to Shuri's face. "I smelt that old power as soon as you arrived," continued the mystic. Nakia was not supposed to know about the background of the Membek and its purpose, so Shuri ordered her to scout out the ridge while she spoke to the mystic. "I am not Membek," said Shuri when Nakia was out of hearing range. "And I am not a decrepit mystic." "You are posing as an Atlantean?" asked Shuri. "Yes." "Why?" "I was nearly caught digging up the secrets of the sunken city by their ancestors, and I have used this form since then to hide my true appearance," replied the mystic. "But enough of me for now, Membek. I have been in contact with my peer who dwells with your people. Atlantis is cursed by its namesake, and to cleanse her will take old power, because it was old power that bind her in the first place. It will require a sacrifice." "Human?" asked Shuri. "Yes. There is no getting around that fact," replied the mystic. "Of me?" "Yes." Shuri turned her skin metallic as a precaution against the mystic. "Be warned, I kill sorcerers," said Shuri. "And many sorcerers from the original Atlantis sacrificed themselves to make you for the greater good of the world," said the mystic. "Hence old power must destroy these cursed people and old power must resurrect them." "There must be an alternative way," said Shuri. "In the meantime these people will have to be refugees again," said the mystic. "Meaning?" The mystic vanished as Nakia returned. "The Atlantean sentinels on the ridge are dead," said Nakia. She gave Shuri a gun shell casing that she found at the bodies. The casing was made from vibranium but of the Antarctic variety. Shuri realized that Wakanda was being framed for something and she told Nakia this. "What could it be?" asked Nakia. "More importantly, who is behind this?" said Shuri, and her instincts pointed at Soberk. An earthquake caught the women off guard. They looked to the rear and saw the beautiful city of Atlantis as it crumbled into debris. Shuri guessed that the earthquake and its magnitude were unnatural because Atlantis was far from the fault lines. "We have to help the survivors," said Shuri to Nakia. An explosion from the ridge knocked them unconscious. Chapter 4 2000 years into the future. Eric, King of Wakanda. The year 4086. The Wakandan Tower in the ruins of Atlantis. King Eric was impressed with little Shuri. The 16-year-old girl walked stealthy next to him as they went further down the tower. She carried a laser gauntlet on one hand and kept it ready to fire. She was brave like the historical figure who Eric had actually met. He was unsure of where the investigation of the tower was leading them. He had no recollection of Wakanda being so close to Atlantis in history. "What are those?" asked Eric as his flashlight beam went over several strange statues. "I have no clue. This is not my forte," replied Shuri. "But they are hideous. They remind me of museum artifacts," said Eric. "What is a museum?" asked Shuri. "It is a 21st century thing." "Was." "Past tense," said Shuri. "Bast should have accompanied us. I don't have a direct link to it down here." The tower was metallic with rib-like walls and dark, the air had a muddy scent and the stairs were moist. Indiana Jones came to Eric's mind as a comparison with what he was experiencing. Shuri raised an alarm and fired her gauntlet. There was a face. "A twisted one," she said. "Alive?" asked Eric. "Yes." Eric took out the poison-edged short sword from his vibranium smart suit. He whistled into the darkness and then spoke. "The King of Wakanda is here. Come out or I am coming to get you and it will not be pretty." Eric sensed motion. An old blue head floated out of the darkness. "Speak," ordered Eric. "Can you verify your rank?" asked the head. "No. You will have to take my word for it," replied Eric. "I can verify his claim," said Shuri. "And you are?" asked the head. "Shuri, Chief Administrator of the Bast Worldwide AI, and I am Wakandan." The red eyes from the head looked at her thoughtfully. "What happened to your body?" asked Eric while he waved the sword under the head. "You are uncouth for a king," said the head. "The mystery van stops here." "What is an Atlantean doing in a Wakandan tower?" asked Eric. "Waiting for old power to revive Atlantis." "What are you called?" asked Shuri. "I am nameless. And probably an old-time mystic too." "How were the Atlantean species eradicated?" asked Eric. "My apprentice did not want to wait on old power, so he joined with another mystic and they foolishly tried to break the curse." "The other mystic was Wakandan?" asked Eric. "No. He was an enemy of Wakanda. When the mystics of Wakanda found out, they built this sanctuary to preserve me from the fallout. I want to bring back the people of Atlantis too, so we can work together," said Eric. "Please note that all mysticism was banned," said Shuri. Wakanda is reversing that law, said Eric. Then count me out of this because I am not working with any mystic to resurrect this place. You can strip me of my post if you see fit, said Shuri and went up the tower. Where will you be? Asked Eric. On the plane, genius, replied Shuri. Eric let her go. He went with the mystic further down into the tower to see what else was there, and he learned about the curse on Atlantis. Meanwhile, the Wakanda air carrier was above the parted ocean and it received an order from Shuri to take her out of Atlantis. A beam was sent down on her and it raised her up to the plane. Shuri ignored the blue whales and megalodon sharks that were on the other side of the four walls of water. She called her assistant Riri and told her about Eric's craziness. I have compromised too much and it ends now, said Shuri. Are you quitting? Asked Riri. I don't know right now. Maybe he might change his mind, replied Shuri. I will go if you decide to, said Riri. It is not necessary. You are the most qualified to replace me. But can you at least hold out until Challenge Day? It is just in a few months and he is going to face sterner challengers this time around, said Riri. The odds of him winning are low. We will see, Riri, we will see, said Shuri. Chapter 5 Present-day Shuri destroyed the city of Atlantis was the rumor that spread through the elites of the worldwide meta-human community. Whether it was by accident or deliberate was debatable. But what was considered fact was that Wakanda killed several Atlantean military officials since there was evidence that vibranium weapons were used. T'Challa dismissed the claims and questioned how a classified Wakanda mission became gossip. No one provided an answer. Nakia's body was still to be found by the Wakanda Navy and Shuri recovered at home. Namor was oddly calm about the incident. T'Challa suspected that Neptune was involved with the king's reaction. But Namor refused to speak with T'Challa directly. The Pacific Ocean Sobek and T'Challa shared a common great enemy. Her name was Malice. The Omega mutant and convicted mass murderer lived on a private Pacific island. She discovered a half-dead Nakia on her shore and had to decide whether to let the woman die or to take her in.